Mafia boss, Damien Cross, was taking his fiancée home when the rain cleared from the windshield and showed him the one woman he had spent 3 years trying to forget. She was crossing the street alone in the storm, except she was holding the hands of 2 small children. Twins. And both of them had his eyes. In that single red light, the empire Damien built through fear stopped mattering. The woman beside him kept talking about their wedding traffic pressed forward, and the past stood 6 feet from his armored car wearing a faded coat and looking terrified. This is more than a story about lost love. It is about what happens when power cannot repair stolen time, and when a dangerous man must choose between the life he controls and the family he never knew he had. Watch closely. Like the video and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The twins with Damien's eyes were still sitting beneath the diner's fluorescent lights when Rachel heard him say her name. For 3 years, she had imagined that voice finding her in crowded stations, grocery store aisles, and the dark hours before dawn. Sometimes it came as a whisper, sometimes as a command. In every version, she woke before she had to face him. Now there was nowhere to wake. The paper napkin slipped from her fingers and landed beside the children's plate. Damien stood at the edge of the booth, rainwater dripping from his black coat onto the cracked tile. His hair was wet, his shoulders rigid, and his face held the dangerous stillness she remembered too well. He did not look like a man reunited with someone he had loved. He looked like a man who had just discovered he had been robbed. Rachel moved before she could think. She slid closer to the children and placed one arm across Sophie's chest. Her other hand found Eli's shoulder. "Mommy." Sophie's voice was quiet. Rachel kept her eyes on Damien. "You need to leave." He stared at her as if the words had arrived in a language he did not understand. Outside, an elevated train thundered above the street. The diner windows trembled in their frames. Cups rattled behind the counter. Damien did not move. "I spent 3 years looking for you." His voice was low enough that the children could not hear the violence beneath it. Rachel looked toward the waitress. The woman was refilling a sugar container near the register, pretending not to watch. "Lower your voice. I am barely speaking. You should not be speaking to me at all." Damien's gaze shifted. Not to the door. Not to the waitress. To Eli. The boy had stopped eating. One hand rested beside the half sandwich while he studied the stranger standing over him. Damien looked at the child's dark hair, the narrow bridge of his nose, and the small dimple beneath his lower lip. Then he looked at Sophie. Her lashes belonged to Rachel. Her eyes did not. Damien's fingers curled slowly at his sides. "Are they mine?" Rachel's body went cold. She had prepared answers for doctors, landlords, employers, and curious neighbors. She had invented a father who worked overseas. A father who died before the twins were born. A father who did not want children. She had never prepared an answer for Damien. No. The lie left her too quickly. His jaw tightened. "No. You heard me." Damien leaned closer. The overhead light carved shadows beneath his cheekbones. "The boy has my face. He is a child. He has my chin. Damien. And both of them have my eyes. Lots of people have gray eyes. Not those eyes." Rachel felt Sophie press against her side. The little girl looked from Damien to Eli. Then she tilted her head with the serious concentration she used when arranging crayons by size. "Mommy, why does he look like Eli?" The question opened the silence. Rachel closed her eyes for 1 second. That was all it took. When she looked at Damien again, something had changed in him. The fury was still there, but it had cracked around the edges. Beneath it was something unguarded and almost frightened. He pulled his gaze away from Rachel and looked at the children. "What are their names?" Rachel said nothing. Eli lifted his sandwich. "I'm Eli." His mouth was full, blurring the words. He pointed across the table. "She's Sophie. She doesn't like pickles." "I do like pickles," Sophie said. "You gave me yours." "Because they were touching the cheese." Eli considered that distinction and returned to his food. Damien's mouth moved as if he had forgotten how to form words. "Eli," he said softly. The boy looked up. Damien said the name again, quieter this time, storing it somewhere deep. Then he looked at Sophie. "Sophie." She did not answer. Her fingers closed around Rachel's sleeve. Rachel knew Damien noticed. He noticed everything. That had once made her feel safe. Now it made her feel exposed. He slid into the empty side of the booth without asking. The vinyl seat gave a tired groan beneath his weight. Rachel stiffened. "You cannot sit here. I have been standing outside in the rain watching my children share one sandwich. They are not your children." His eyes lifted to hers. "Do not lie to me again." The waitress approached with a pot of coffee. She slowed when she felt the tension at the table. "Everything all right over here?" Rachel opened her mouth. Damien reached into his coat, removed his wallet, and placed a folded bill beside the empty cup. "Bring them whatever they want." The waitress glanced at the money. It was more than Rachel earned during 2 full shifts. "We did not ask for anything," Rachel said. Damien kept his attention on the waitress. "Grilled cheese, soup, fries, milk. Bring enough for both of them." Eli's eyes brightened at the word fries. Rachel pushed the bill back toward Damien. "We do not need your money." He stopped it with 2 fingers. "You counted $6 before you ordered." Her face burned. "You were watching me. I watched you kneel on a wet sidewalk because he could not keep walking. I watched you carry him while holding her hand. I watched you come into this place and decide you could not afford to eat." His calm made the humiliation worse. Rachel wanted him angry. Anger was easier to fight. This quiet attention felt like being stripped in public. "We were fine before you walked through that door." "You called this fine?" His eyes moved over the stained ceiling, the damaged booth, and the water seeping beneath the entrance. "We have a roof. They have food. They are safe. They are freezing. They were caught in the rain. They are hungry. They are children. Children are always hungry." The waitress remained beside the table, caught between curiosity and fear. Damien looked up. "Please bring the food." The word "please" sounded unfamiliar in his mouth. The waitress collected the money and walked away. Rachel watched her disappear behind the counter. "You do not get to enter their lives and start giving orders. I asked if they were mine, and I answered. You lied." His voice sharpened. Eli flinched. The spoon beside his plate struck the table. Damien saw it. The anger vanished from his face so quickly that Rachel almost doubted it had been there. He leaned back, creating more space between himself and the children. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "How old are they?" Rachel looked toward the rain-streaked window. "Almost 3. Damien swallowed. He calculated without moving his lips. Rachel had disappeared 3 years and 4 months earlier. She could see the dates assembling behind his eyes. The last week they had spent together. The morning he left before sunrise. The unanswered calls. The empty apartment. You knew when you left. It was not a question. Rachel looked down at her hands. "I had just found out." His breath left through his nose. For a moment, the diner sounds grew louder around them. Plates clattered. Oil hissed in the kitchen. The old refrigerator compressor rattled behind the counter. Damien stared at the children. "You were pregnant." "Yes. With twins. I did not know that part until later." His hand closed around the edge of the table. The cheap laminate creaked beneath his fingers. You found out you were carrying my child and disappeared that same night. Rachel looked directly at him. I found out I was carrying your children after I learned who you really were. The words changed the air. Damien's eyes hardened, but Rachel did not stop. She had spent too many years speaking to him in empty rooms. You told me the warehouses were part of your development business. You told me the clubs were investments. You told me the men outside your building were security. They were. They carried guns into restaurants. They protected me. They protected you from people who wanted you dead. You forgot to mention why. Damien glanced at the twins. Rachel lowered her voice. I found the drawer. He became completely still. What drawer? The locked one in your study. You broke into it. I was looking for my passport. You had moved it after the trip to Boston. His eyes narrowed. Rachel saw the room as clearly as if she were standing inside it again. The penthouse had been silent that night. Damien had told her he would be gone until morning. Rain tapped against the high windows while she searched through the desk for the passport she needed for a work application. The drawer had resisted when she pulled it. A key lay beneath a stack of property records. Inside, she found shipping manifests marked with initials and dates, photographs of men whose faces she remembered from television reports, a handgun with a long black suppressor, a ledger containing payments to police officers, union leaders, and city officials. Then she found the phone. The messages were brief. Move the shipment before midnight. The guard saw too much. Handle him at the river. No names, no explanations. None were necessary. Rachel had been sitting on the study floor when the penthouse door opened. Damien entered without calling for her. There was blood on the white cuff beneath his coat. Not much, just enough. He noticed her staring and covered it with his sleeve. Broken glass, he had said. The lie came easily, smoothly. She had loved him enough to recognize the exact moment the man she knew disappeared. The following morning, she took a pregnancy test in a drugstore restroom because she could not bear to see the result inside his home. 2 lines appeared before she finished washing her hands. At the clinic, the technician moved the wand across the screen and smiled. There are 2 heartbeats. Rachel had stared at the flickering shapes. Damien's voice echoed in her memory. No one will ever touch you while I am alive. For the first time, the promise sounded less like devotion and more like a locked door. Back in the diner, Damien looked at her with the same expression he had worn the night she found the drawer. Controlled, watchful, calculating what she knew. I kept you out of the business, he said. You lied to keep me inside your life. I kept you safe. You came home with blood on your shirt. It was not mine. That did not make it better. The waitress arrived with 2 plates, bowls of soup, and a basket of fries. She set them down quickly. Eli reached for the fries. Rachel pulled the basket closer to him and Sophie. The ordinary movement gave her hands something to do. Damien watched the twins eat. Eli dipped a fry into his soup. Sophie separated the darker fries from the lighter ones and lined them along the edge of her plate. Damien studied every motion as if trying to memorize years in minutes. Where did you go? Rachel hesitated. He noticed. I am not sending men after anyone who helped you. You expect me to believe that? No. The honesty unsettled her. I expect you to tell me because I need to understand how you stayed hidden. Rachel looked toward the children. They should not hear this. They are eating. They hear more than you think. Damien lowered his voice until it barely crossed the table. Rachel did the same. I left through the service garage. I took cash from the emergency envelope in the kitchen. I know. You counted it. I counted everything after you vanished. She looked away. I took a bus south. A woman who knew my mother helped me find a room outside Wilmington, Delaware. For a week. Then North Carolina. Damien's brow tightened. I had people searching the entire East Coast. You searched for Rachel Bennett. His eyes lifted. I started using my mother's name. Monroe. Yes, you changed your identification. I changed enough. With whose help Rachel did not answer. Damien leaned back. The old version of him would have pressed harder. He would have found the name in her silence and sent someone to confirm it before the coffee cooled. This time he let the question remain unanswered. Why come back? Rachel's hand paused beside Eli's cup. I did not come back for you. I did not ask if you did. She hated that he could still hear the distinction. She touched Eli's shoulder. He needs a specialist. Damien looked at the boy. What kind of specialist? A pediatric cardiologist. The word struck him harder than any accusation. His gaze dropped immediately to Eli's chest. The child was eating a fry, unaware of the fear moving across Damien's face. What is wrong with his heart? Keep your voice down. What is wrong with him? Rachel saw the command rising in him and raised one finger. No, you do not get to speak to me like that. His jaw worked. He forced the words out more carefully. Please tell me. Rachel looked at Eli. He was born with a small defect in one of his valves. It affects the way blood moves through his heart. Damien's face lost color. Does he need surgery? Not now. Later. We do not know. What does that mean? It means the doctors monitor him. It means he gets tired faster than other children. It means I know how to count his pulse in the dark. Damien looked down. A strip of white hospital plastic showed beneath Eli's sleeve. He had seen it outside and assumed it was part of the child's clothing. He reached toward it, then stopped before touching the boy. How long has this been happening since he was born? You handled it alone. I was not alone. Who was with you? People who did not bring armed guards into the hospital. His eyes returned to hers. Rachel expected anger. Instead, she saw pain, not theatrical pain, not the rage he used as armor. Something small and private moved behind his eyes. How many times has he been admitted twice? Damien's hand tightened beneath the table. How serious? The first time he had trouble breathing after a respiratory infection. The second time was for tests. And you never called me. Rachel's control finally cracked. How was I supposed to call you? Her whisper came out fierce. Should I have dialed your number while I sat beside his hospital bed and waited to see if he could breathe? Should I have told the man whose enemies bombed cars and buried witnesses that he had a sick son? What would you have done? Damien filled the hallway with soldiers, bought the hospital, threatened the doctors until they promised something medicine could not promise. I would have been there. And everyone looking for a way to hurt you would have known exactly where to find us. You decided that for me. I decided it for them. She pointed toward the twins. You lost 3 years. I understand that. I know what I took from you. But I spent every one of those years keeping them alive. Damien's stare remained fixed on her. You stole their father. I saved them from your name. The sentence landed between them. Eli looked up. Mommy, can I have milk? Rachel turned immediately. Yes, sweetheart. She poured from the small carton the waitress had brought. Her hands trembled. Damien watched the milk shake against the rim of the cup. When Rachel placed it down, he spoke quietly. You believe being my child is a death sentence. I believe being known as your child is one. That is not the same thing. Tell that to the families of the men in your ledger. His eyes hardened again. They came after me, and you came after them. That is how my world works. That is why I left. For several seconds, neither spoke. Sophie dipped a piece of bread into her soup. Eli pushed the plate toward Damien. You want one? Damien looked at the fry the boy was offering him. Rachel held her breath. Damien slowly took it. Thank you. Eli nodded and returned to eating. The simple exchange seemed to leave Damien more shaken than the argument. Rachel saw him look at the fry in his hand before placing it on the plate. He did not eat it. Where are you staying? He asked. No, I am not asking so I can take them from you. You do not know what you are asking for yet. They are my children. They are not property. His face tightened. I know that. Do you? The question stayed in the space between them. Outside, thunder rolled beyond the buildings. Every phone in the diner sounded at nearly the same time. A weather warning flashed across Rachel's screen. Flooding had closed several streets. Bus service was being suspended in parts of Center City. The rain intensified against the glass, turning the outside world into a blur of headlights and black water. Rachel checked the time. We need to go. Damien looked toward the window. We're home. You are not taking them into that storm. You do not decide that. The buses are stopping. We can walk to the subway. Eli could not cross one block without you checking his heart. Rachel's expression changed. Damien regretted the words before they finished leaving him. I am not criticizing him. You are criticizing me. I am telling you what I saw. You saw 10 minutes of our lives. I saw enough. No, you saw wet clothes and an empty wallet. You did not see me sitting awake with him for 3 nights when he had a fever. You did not see Sophie learn to sleep through ambulance sirens because our first apartment was beside a hospital. You did not see me work mornings, clean offices at night, and still come home in time to read the same book 14 times because she could not sleep without it. Rachel's voice broke. She pressed her lips together until the weakness passed. You do not get to look at one bad night and decide I failed them. Damien lowered his eyes. I do not think you failed them. Then stop looking at me like this place is proof. He glanced around the diner once more. When he looked back, his voice had changed. I think you survived me. Rachel did not answer. The words were too close to the truth. He took out his phone. She stiffened. Who are you calling Nate? No soldiers. He is my driver. He is one of your men. He is the only man I trust with my life. That is not comforting. Damien set the phone on the table without making the call. There is a house near Rittenhouse Square. It is not my home. It is not connected to the main organization. Almost no one knows it exists. Rachel shook her head. No. One night. No. Warm beds. Dry clothes. Food. We have a room. Where? She said nothing. Is it safe? It was until you followed us. He absorbed the accusation. The rain drummed harder against the windows. Damien leaned forward, but he kept his hands visible on the table. I am not asking you to come to my estate. You are asking me to enter a locked building you control. You can lock the bedroom from the inside. And when I want to leave, you leave. She gave him a cold look. You expect me to trust that no. Again, the honesty disturbed her. I expect you to protect them from the storm tonight. Tomorrow you tell me what I have to do to see them again. Rachel searched his face. See them? Yes. Not take them. His expression darkened. You hid my children for 3 years. There is a part of me that wants to carry them out of this diner and never let you disappear again. Rachel's hand moved toward Sophie. Damien saw it. He continued before she could rise. But I will not do that. Why? His eyes shifted toward Eli. Because he offered me a fry. Rachel stared at him. The answer sounded almost absurd. It was also the most human thing he had said. Damien looked back at her. And because she is afraid of me. Sophie lowered her eyes when he glanced at her. I do not want them to learn that fear is the only way I know how to keep someone close. The storm warning sounded again. Rachel looked at the children. Their coats were still wet. Eli's cheeks had gone pale with exhaustion. Sophie rubbed one eye with the heel of her hand. Rachel had spent 3 years making decisions alone. Every choice had been measured against danger, rent, medicine, and distance. Trusting Damien felt impossible. Walking 2 tired children through flooded streets felt worse. One night she said, "Damien did not move." Rachel pointed at him. "You listen carefully. I am listening. Nate drives. No one else comes near us." "Agreed. I keep my phone. Yes. You do not take it, track it, or search it." His silence lasted half a second too long. "Damien, I will not touch your phone. You do not call doctors, lawyers, or anyone in your organization without telling me. I may have to contact Nate." "Only Nate?" He nodded. "The bedroom door stays locked." "Yes. You do not touch the children unless I give you permission." The condition cut him, but he accepted it. "Yes. And if I decide to leave in the morning, you do not stop me." Damien looked at her for a long moment. The man she remembered would have agreed while planning 5 ways to prevent it. She could not tell which man sat across from her now. Finally he said, "You leave if you choose to leave." Rachel held his gaze. "If you break any of those conditions, I call the police." One corner of his mouth moved without humor. "You know half the police in this district work for me. Then I call the other half." For the first time, something close to admiration passed across his face. He picked up his phone and called Nate. "Bring the car to the diner." A pause. No one else. Another pause. Damien's eyes remained on Rachel. "Do not ask questions." He ended the call. The children finished eating while the rain battered the city. Damien did not speak again. He watched Rachel wipe Eli's mouth. He watched Sophie struggle with the zipper of her coat. When Damien moved to help, Rachel looked at him once and he stopped. He waited by the door instead. When Nate's black sedan pulled to the curb, Damien opened the diner door and stepped into the storm. Cold air rushed inside. Rachel helped the twins into their damp coats. Damien removed his own coat and held it over the children as they hurried toward the car. Rain soaked through his shirt within seconds, but he kept the coat above their heads until Rachel had placed them safely inside. She paused beside the open door. Damien stood in the street water running down his face, waiting for her decision even after she had already made it. Rachel climbed into the sedan. Damien followed and closed the door. The storm vanished behind armored glass. In the sudden silence, the sharp scent of another woman's perfume filled the car. The perfume reached Rachel before the warmth did. Jasmine amber, and something sweet enough to cling to the back of her throat. It did not belong to Damien. She froze with one hand on Eli's seatbelt. The inside of the sedan was too clean, too quiet, too expensive. Rain slid across the dark windows in silver rivers, but the storm felt far away now, sealed outside by thick glass and polished steel. Sophie sat beside Rachel with both hands folded in her lap. Her red boots did not touch the floor. Eli leaned against the seat, heavy with exhaustion, his wet hair curling against his forehead. Damien took the seat across from them. He kept as much distance as the car allowed. Nate looked into the mirror. Where to the Rittenhouse house? Nate hesitated. Only for a second. Then he pulled away from the curb. Rachel finished fastening Eli's belt. The floral scent filled every breath. She looked toward the empty space beside Damien. A pale silk thread lay against the black leather. It caught the light when the car turned. Someone had been sitting there. Someone in an expensive dress. Someone who belonged in this car more naturally than Rachel did. Sophie noticed Rachel staring. Why does it smell like flowers? Damien looked toward the window. Someone else was sitting here. who Rachel placed a hand gently over Sophie's knee. "That is enough questions." Sophie looked at her mother, then back at Damien. "Was she your friend?" Damien's eyes met Rachel's. "No." The answer came too quickly. Rachel said nothing. Philadelphia moved past in wet streaks. Storefronts blurred behind the rain. Headlights shone across the ceiling of the car, then vanished. Eli's head rolled toward Rachel. She adjusted his coat around his shoulders. Damien watched every movement. He watched the way Rachel touched 2 fingers beneath Eli's jaw. He watched her count silently. He watched the tension leave her face when she was satisfied. "How often do you check his pulse?" Rachel did not look at him. "As often as I need to." "Does he carry medication?" "No." "Should he?" "The doctor says no." "Which doctor?" She turned her head slowly. "You agreed not to call anyone." "I asked a question. You asked for a name. I want to know who is treating my son." The words settled heavily inside the car. "My son." Rachel looked away first. Sophie's gray eyes moved between them. "Are you somebody's daddy?" Damien became still. Nate's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Rachel closed her eyes. The question was so simple that it cut through every defense in the car. Damien looked at Sophie. "I think I am." Her brow wrinkled. "You think I only found out tonight? That is a long time to not know." Damien's mouth tightened. "Yes." Sophie looked toward Rachel. "Did you forget to tell him?" Rachel's fingers curled around the edge of the seat. "No, sweetheart." Then why did he not know Rachel opened her mouth, but no answer came? Damien did not rescue her. He sat in the shadows waiting. Rachel looked down at Sophie. "It is a grown-up story." Sophie considered that. "Is it a bad story?" Damien answered before Rachel could. "Yes." Rachel looked at him sharply. Sophie leaned back against the seat. "Does it have monsters?" Damien's eyes stayed on Rachel. "Yes." The car fell quiet. A few minutes later, Eli's breathing softened. His head tipped against Rachel's side. Sophie fought sleep longer. She watched Damien with open suspicion. "What is your name, Damien?" "My name is Sophie." "I know. How your mother told me." "No." "Eli told you." Something almost like a smile touched Damien's face. "You are right." Sophie nodded, satisfied. Then she looked at the scar crossing the back of his left hand. "Did you hurt yourself a long time ago?" "Did it hurt?" "Yes." "Did you cry?" Nate coughed into his fist. Damien glanced toward the front. "No." Sophie narrowed her eyes. "Mommy says people cry when things hurt. Your mother is usually right." Rachel felt the words more than she expected. Sophie's eyelids lowered. "Then you probably cried." Damien looked down at his scar. "Probably." Within minutes she was asleep against Rachel's arm. The city thinned around them. The car turned onto a quiet street lined with old brick houses and bare trees. Rain gathered in the gutters. Brown leaves clung to the pavement. Nate pulled into a narrow private garage beneath a 3-story townhouse. A steel door closed behind them. The silence inside the garage felt absolute. Rachel immediately unfastened Sophie. Damien opened his door and walked around the car. By the time he reached Rachel's side, she was trying to lift Eli. The boy was completely asleep. His body sagged against her arms. Rachel adjusted her grip and tried again. Damien stopped beside the open door. "Let me carry him." "I have him." "You are shaking." "I said I have him." Damien did not move closer. He waited. Rachel lifted Eli halfway out of the seat. Pain tightened across her lower back. Her foot slipped on the damp concrete. Damien caught the edge of the door but did not touch her. "Rachel." She looked at him. "Ask." His expression changed. It took him a moment to understand. Then he lowered his voice. "May I carry him?" Rachel looked at Eli. The child slept with one hand curled beneath his chin. She looked back at Damien. "Yes." Damien reached into the car slowly. His hands slid beneath Eli's arms and back. He lifted the boy with great care, but the moment Eli's weight settled against him, Damien stopped. Eli's cheek rested against his shoulder. One small hand fell across Damien's chest. Damien stared down at him. The boy weighed less than 20 pounds, but Damien held him as if the entire city had been placed in his arms. Rachel saw his fingers spread across Eli's back, the same fingers that had once broken a man's jaw outside a restaurant, the same hands that had touched her face gently while lying about everything else. Damien adjusted the boy closer. Eli sighed in his sleep. The sound went through Damien like a blade. Nate stepped out of the car. "Do you need anything?" "Not tonight." Nate glanced at Rachel and the twins. His expression softened, but he looked uneasy. "I will stay nearby." "No." "Damien." I said no. Rachel stiffened at the tone. Damien noticed. He looked back at Nate. "Park 2 streets over. Do not come inside unless I call." Nate nodded. Rachel lifted Sophie against her shoulder. The little girl murmured but did not wake. Damien led them toward a private elevator. The doors opened into the 3rd floor. The townhouse was silent and cold. White sheets covered the furniture. The hardwood floors reflected the dim lights. Empty shelves lined the walls. No photographs. No books. No signs that anyone had ever laughed there. Rachel stepped into the living room. "You own this place?" "Yes." "Do you live here?" "No." "Does anyone?" "No." Her eyes moved across the covered furniture. "Then, why keep it?" Damien pressed a light switch. A lamp illuminated the hallway. "Because empty places are useful." Rachel looked at him. "That sounds like something you would say." He did not defend himself. "The bedroom is this way." He carried Eli down the hall. Rachel followed with Sophie. The bedroom was large, but it felt less sterile than the rest of the house. A king-sized bed stood against the far wall. Heavy curtains covered the windows. A narrow lamp cast warm light across the sheets. Rachel placed Sophie on the right side of the bed. Damien moved toward the left. "No." He stopped. Rachel shifted Sophie gently. "Eli sleeps on the left." Damien looked down at the boy. "Why, if he wakes at night, he looks for the wall." Damien carried him to the other side. Rachel removed Sophie's wet coat and boots. "She needs the hallway light." Damien glanced toward the door. "I will leave it on. She wakes if the room gets too dark." He nodded. Rachel opened her bag and pulled out a worn, stuffed rabbit. One ear had been repaired with blue thread. Damien watched her place it beside Eli. "He cannot sleep without that." "He can. He just sleeps better with it." Damien lowered Eli onto the bed. The boy rolled toward the wall immediately. One hand found the rabbit. Damien stood over him. Rachel pulled the blanket over both children. They sleep heavily after long days. Damien did not respond. He looked at Sophie's face, then Eli's. His expression had gone distant. Rachel knew that look. He was counting losses. Birthdays he had not seen. First words he had not heard. Nights when they had been sick. Mornings when they had woken asking questions about a father who did not exist. Rachel moved toward the door. "Come to the kitchen." She expected him to give the order. Instead, he remained beside the bed. After a few seconds, he followed. The kitchen was marble steel and silence. Damien opened a cabinet and found a bottle of whiskey. He removed the cork and poured a small amount into a glass. Rachel stayed near the doorway. He noticed. "You can sit. I would rather stand." He placed the glass on the counter without drinking. Rachel folded her arms. The oversized room made them feel farther apart than they were. Damien looked at her damp clothes. "There are clean things upstairs." "I am fine. You are freezing." "I said I am fine." His mouth tightened. He wanted to argue. She could see the habit rise in him. Then he let it go. You asked me to listen. Yes, I am trying. Rachel looked away. The admission made anger harder to hold. Damien rested both hands on the island. Tell me everything. There is nothing left to tell. You disappeared. You gave birth to 2 children. My son has a heart condition. You returned to Philadelphia without contacting me. That is not a question. His fingers pressed against the marble. Why did you never give me a choice? Rachel stared at him. I gave you choices every day we were together. You never told me you were pregnant. I asked you what kind of future you wanted. That is not the same. I asked if you ever wanted to leave the organization. You asked while we were in bed after midnight. I asked because you came home with bruises on your hands. Damien looked down. I told you I could not leave. You told me you did not want to. He lifted his eyes. Rachel stepped closer. You said the cross name was the only thing no one could take from you. You said power was the closest thing a man like you could have to safety. I remember. Then answer me now. He said nothing. If I had told you I was pregnant that morning, would you have left? Damien opened his mouth. The silence stretched. Rachel felt something inside her settle, not heal, settle. She had always known. Hearing nothing confirmed it. You would have built a nursery in your penthouse, she said. You would have put guards outside the door. You would have bought every doctor in the city. You would have called it protection. I would have kept you alive. We wanted different things. I wanted you safe. I wanted us free. The words echoed softly in the empty kitchen. Damien looked toward the hallway. You thought freedom meant poverty. Rachel's face hardened. Do not do that. I watched you count money for 1 sandwich, and I fed them. You work 2 jobs, and I come home to them. You live in a rented room. They know every corner of it. You walk through storms because you cannot afford a car. They do not hear gunshots outside our bedroom. Damien's hand closed into a fist. Rachel stepped closer. You keep looking at what I could not give them. Look at what I did. He held her gaze. I am looking. Then say it. He looked toward the hallway again. When he spoke, his voice was stripped of command. You kept them alive. Rachel swallowed. You kept them hidden. She nodded. You carried all of it alone. Her eyes burned. I did not have another choice. You should have. She almost laughed. You were the reason I did not. Damien lowered his head. The phone in his pocket began to ring. The sound cut through the room. He removed it. Amelia Prescott appeared on the screen. Rachel saw the name. She did not mean to react. Damien noticed anyway. The perfume in the car returned to her memory. The silk thread against the leather. Someone else was sitting here. Rachel looked toward the glass in Damien's hand. Who is Amelia? He silenced the call. It does not matter. Her expression changed. Do not lie to me again. I am not lying. You said someone else was in the car. Yes. A woman. Yes. And now a woman is calling you after midnight. Damien set the phone on the counter. Rachel waited. His silence felt familiar. She hated it. Who is she? Damien looked at her directly. My fiancée. The word entered the room quietly. Rachel did not move. For one strange second she thought she had misunderstood him. Your what? My fiancé. Her chest tightened. She looked down at the floor. A small sound escaped her, almost a laugh. Of course. Rachel, you have a life. It is not what you think. You are getting married. It is an arrangement. She looked up sharply. People usually call engagements arrangements when they want to make them sound less real. There is no love between us. You gave her a ring. She gave me access to her father. Rachel stared at him. That does not make it better. It was political. It was a wedding. It was never going to be a marriage. Then why were you taking her home? Damien did not answer quickly enough. Rachel stepped back. The old ache she had carried for 3 years shifted into something sharper. She had imagined Damien angry. She had imagined him searching. She had imagined him forgetting her. She had never allowed herself to imagine him planning a wedding. You should go back to her. No. She is waiting for you. No. You left her in traffic. I saw you. That does not erase her. It erases everything. Rachel stared at him. You do not get to say things like that. Why? Because I am standing here in borrowed clothes with 2 children asleep down the hall and you are speaking as if canceling your life is proof of love. The phone rang again. This time Damien answered. He placed it on the counter and turned on the speaker. Amelia's voice filled the kitchen. Where are you? She sounded furious and frightened. Damien said nothing. Do you understand what you have done? My father sat in that restaurant for an hour. Reporters saw you leave the car. Nate said you followed some woman into a diner. Rachel's eyes moved to Damien. Nate had told her. Amelia continued. Tell me this is not about some woman from your past. Damien's face hardened. Choose your next words carefully. Amelia gave a short, bitter laugh. Is she asking for money? Women like that always come back when they need something. Rachel looked down at her shirt. It belonged to no one. Her jeans were damp. Her shoes had mud on them. For 1 second, shame moved through her. Then Damien spoke. The engagement is over. Silence answered him. Amelia's voice returned more quietly. What? The announcement is cancelled. You cannot be serious. I am. My father controls the port security contracts, not anymore. He controls half the zoning board. I know. You will lose political protection. I know. The Santoros will take every open contract before morning. I know. Her voice cracked with disbelief. Then why are you doing this? Damien looked at Rachel. His eyes moved toward the hallway. Because there are 2 children sleeping in this house who matter more than anything your father can offer me. Rachel's breath caught. Amelia heard it. Who is there? Damien picked up the phone. Do not call again. He ended the call. For several seconds, the kitchen remained silent. Rachel stared at him. You just destroyed a political alliance. Yes. For children you met tonight. My children. You did not do that for me. I know. The answer surprised her. Damien stepped away from the island. I did it because I will not marry one woman while trying to become part of another woman's family. Rachel's face tightened. This is not a family. His expression changed. She regretted the words as soon as they left her, but she did not take them back. Damien nodded slowly. No, not yet. Rachel looked toward the hallway. You still made the decision without asking anyone. The engagement was mine to end. The consequences are not yours alone. They will not reach you. You cannot promise that. I can. That is the kind of promise that made me leave. Damien stopped. Rachel crossed the room until only the island stood between them. You say you want to change, but you still believe wanting something gives you the right to rearrange everyone's life. I ended a contract. You may have started a war. His phone vibrated again. Not a call, a message. Damien looked at the screen. Rachel watched the last softness leave his face. What is it? He turned the phone over. Nothing. Her expression hardened. Damien. He looked at her. Then he turned the screen back. A message from Nate glowed against the dark kitchen. Prescott called the Santoros. Port contracts are moving. Caleb wants to know why. Rachel read it twice. The house no longer felt empty. It felt exposed. What did you start? Damien slipped the phone into his pocket. His eyes moved toward the hallway where Eli and Sophie slept beneath a borrowed blanket. Something I should have ended years ago. The message remained between them long after Damien locked the screen. Prescott had called the Santoros. The port contracts were moving. Caleb wanted an explanation. Rachel looked toward the hallway. Nothing had changed there. The light still burned softly beneath the bedroom door. Eli and Sophie were still asleep. The house remained quiet enough to hear rain tapping against the high windows, yet the silence no longer felt empty. It felt watched. You said almost no one knew this place existed. Almost no one does. That is not the same as no one. Damien crossed the kitchen and checked the security panel beside the door. 4 green lights glowed across the small screen. Front entrance, garage, roof access, rear service stairwell, all secure. Rachel followed him. Who is Caleb, my second? What does that mean? It means he runs things when I'm not there. And now he wants to know why you ended the engagement. Yes. What happens when you tell him Damien did not answer? Rachel watched his face. What happens? He will advise me to repair the alliance. And if you refuse, he will decide whether my decision makes me weak. Rachel let out a quiet breath. You destroyed all of this in one phone call. No. Damien looked at the security screen. It was already unstable. I simply stopped pretending otherwise. That does not protect the children. No. The admission came without resistance. Rachel folded her arms tightly. What do we do? Damien turned toward her. The question seemed to surprise him. Not because he lacked an answer. Because she had said we. Rachel noticed the change in his expression and corrected herself. What do I do? You sleep. She stared at him. Do not start. I am not dismissing you. There is nothing useful you can do at 2 a.m. while the children are exhausted. You could tell me the truth. I am telling you the truth. You are giving me pieces, because the whole picture will not make you safer. It will help me decide whether to stay. Damien's jaw tightened. He looked toward the bedroom, then back at her. The Santoros have wanted access to the Delaware terminals for 6 years. Prescott blocked them because his political future was tied to mine. Now he believes I humiliated his daughter and threatened his career. If he opens the contracts, the Santoros will move quickly. How quickly? Before sunrise. Rachel felt the cold deepen beneath her skin. And Caleb. He will call the captains. They will ask why I damaged a profitable alliance without consulting them. Will they know about us? Not unless Nate spoke. You trust him? Yes. You trusted me once. The words came quietly. Damien did not flinch, but she saw the impact. I trusted you with the man I wanted you to believe I was. That was not trust. I know. Rachel looked away. The rain softened for a moment, then began again. Damien walked to a drawer beneath the security panel and removed a black phone Rachel had not seen before. He turned it on. No name appeared on the screen, only a numeric code. What is that, a secure line? You agreed to tell me before calling anyone? I am telling you now. Who are you calling Nate? She nodded. Damien placed the call. Nate answered immediately. Where are you? 2 streets east. Did you tell Caleb about Rachel? A pause. Rachel heard rain striking the roof of Nate's car through the speaker. I told him you left the engagement dinner after seeing someone. Did you mention the children? No. Did Amelia? She only knew there was a woman. Prescott has people checking traffic cameras. Damien's eyes hardened. How many cameras caught us? At least 3 between City Hall and the diner. Rachel closed her eyes. The wet crosswalk appeared in her mind. Eli slipping, Sophie looking back. Damien stepping into the street. "Can they identify me?" she asked. Nate heard her. His voice changed. "Not from what I have seen." Damien looked at Rachel. "That will not last." Nate continued. "Prescott sent one of his aides to the diner. The waitress described you." Rachel gripped the edge of the counter. "Did she give him my name?" "She did not know it. She knows I work there." Damien turned toward Rachel. "You work at that diner?" She held his gaze. "Yes." "You said you had a room nearby?" "I do. You brought the children into the place where you work. The woman on the night shift watches them when I cannot afford someone else." Damien's anger rose visibly. Rachel lifted one hand. "Do not." He stopped. Nate spoke through the phone. "Caleb is asking for a meeting at 8. "No." "Damien. Tell him noon. He says the captains are already gathering. Then let them wait." Nate lowered his voice. "There is something else. One of Santoro's cars passed this street 20 minutes ago." The room changed. Damien's posture became still and precise. "Did it slow down?" "Yes." "Plate stolen. Where is it now?" "Gone." Damien ended the call. Rachel stared at him. "You said they did not know this place." "They may not. A car connected to your enemies passed the street. It may have been checking Nate, or following him." "Yes." He did not soften it. Rachel appreciated the truth and hated him for it. She looked toward the bedroom. "We are leaving." "Not tonight. You promised. I promised you could choose. I am choosing." "Then choose after dawn." "No." Damien stepped between her and the hallway. He did not touch her. He did not need to. His size filled the space. "Rachel, listen to me. I have been listening since you entered that diner. The streets may be watched, and this house may be watched." "Yes." "Then I would rather be moving. With 2 exhausted children in a storm, with my children anywhere you are not deciding everything." Damien's expression hardened. "I am trying to keep them alive, and I have been doing that without you. You were invisible then. You are not invisible now." The words struck her. Rachel glanced at the dark windows. Her reflection stared back from the glass. Wet hair, borrowed clothes, a face she barely recognized. For years, anonymity had been her only armor. Now Damien had shattered it simply by seeing her. She stepped away from him. "You should never have followed us." His eyes darkened. "I could not let you disappear again. That is exactly what I mean. You did not stop to think about what would happen if anyone saw you. I saw my children, and the entire city saw you react." He looked away. Rachel pressed her palm to her forehead. She was too tired to remain angry with the same force. "What is the safest choice?" Damien studied her. "Staying here until I know who is looking." "How long hours?" "Not days. And if I decide to leave after that, I will not stop you." She searched his face. "You keep saying that." "I know. I still do not believe you. I know that too." They stood in silence. A faint sound came from the hallway. Rachel turned immediately. Eli whimpered in his sleep. She walked toward the bedroom. Damien remained in the kitchen. Rachel stopped at the doorway and looked back. "You should sleep." "I will not. Because of the Santoros. Because I spent 3 years thinking you were dead." His voice was quiet. "I am not closing my eyes while you are in the next room." Rachel felt the answer in her chest. She did not respond. She went to the children and locked the door. Morning came gray and cold. Rachel woke with one arm stretched across the mattress. Her hand touched empty sheets. Her eyes opened. Sophie's side of the bed was empty. Eli was gone. Rachel sat up so quickly the room tilted. Eli. No answer. Sophie. She crossed the bedroom barefoot and unlocked the door. The hallway was silent. Panic moved through her in a clean, violent wave. She ran toward the kitchen. The smell reached her first. Burned bread, then smoke. Rachel rounded the corner and stopped. Damien stood beside the stove wearing dark trousers and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. His hair was still damp from a shower. A shallow burn scar showed near his wrist. A blackened piece of toast smoked on a plate. Sophie sat on one of the high stools with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Eli stood on the lower rail of another stool trying to reach a glass jar. Damien caught him by the waist before he fell. Rachel's breath left her. Damien looked up. "I was about to get you. You took them out of the room." Sophie woke first. She opened the door. "I locked it." She found the small key above the frame. Rachel looked at Sophie. The girl pointed toward Damien. He could not find breakfast. Damien set Eli safely on the floor. "I found breakfast. You burned it," Sophie said. "I found it before I burned it." Rachel crossed the kitchen and pulled Eli against her. She touched his face, checked his breathing, then turned toward Damien. "You should have woken me. You had not slept. That is not your decision." "I know." His answer stopped her. He placed the pan in the sink. "I made the wrong choice." Rachel stared at him. No excuse, no argument, just the admission. Eli pulled at her shirt. "I want circles." "He means cereal," Rachel said. Damien opened a cabinet. Inside were 6 boxes, none familiar. Rachel looked at them. "When did those arrive? An hour ago." She turned. Several paper bags sat near the service entrance. Children's clothes, groceries, medicine, 2 stuffed animals, a box with the image of a portable monitor. Rachel walked toward it. "What is this, a heart monitor?" Her head snapped up. "You called a doctor." "No, you promised. I called a medical supplier. That is still someone. I did not give Eli's name. You had no right. I wanted one here in case he needed it. You do not even know how to use it. I can learn. That is not the point." She opened another bag. Shirts, trousers, socks, coats, all in several sizes. "Did you buy an entire store? I did not know what fit." Rachel laughed once without humor. "You cannot purchase 3 years in one morning." Damien went still. The words remained between them. Sophie stopped moving. Rachel immediately lowered her voice. Damien looked at the bags. "I know." Something in his face made her anger lose its shape. He closed the cabinet. "I know I cannot replace anything." Eli tugged at Damien's sleeve. "Open." He held up a small bottle of apple juice. Damien knelt. He took the bottle and twisted the cap. Eli watched his hands. His finger touched the scar across Damien's knuckles. "Did a dog bite you?" Damien looked at the scar. "No." What did Rachel waited? A lie would have been easy. An accident, broken glass, a dog. Damien glanced at her. Bad choices. Eli accepted the answer. He took the juice and walked back to Sophie. Rachel remained still. Damien stood. "I ordered too much." "Yes, I can send it back." Rachel looked at the children's coats. Their old ones were still damp. "No." He waited. "They can use the clothes." Damien nodded once. It was a small surrender from both of them. The secure phone rang on the counter. Damien answered. Nate's voice came through. The Santoros moved men into the river clubs. Prescott pulled the port security vote. Caleb is downstairs. Damien looked toward the hallway. I did not call him. He used his access code. Damien's entire body changed. The uncertain father disappeared. The man Rachel had fled returned in an instant. "Keep him in the garage. I tried." A sound came from the front of the house. A sharp electronic chime. Then the lock disengaged. Damien ended the call. Rachel. She had already moved toward the children. "What?" "Take them into the bedroom." Sophie looked up. Why Rachel wrapped the blanket around her. "We are playing a quiet game." Damien crossed to the kitchen island and reached beneath the marble edge. A hidden panel opened. He removed a black pistol. Rachel's stomach tightened. "You said this place was safe. It is safer than the street." "That is not what I asked." The front door opened. Footsteps entered the living room, slow, confident. Damien checked the weapon. Bedroom. Lock the door. Rachel lifted Eli. Sophie climbed down from the stool. Rachel took her hand. She stopped beside Damien. "Do not do this in front of them." His gaze met hers. "I will not." She wanted to believe him. Rachel led the twins into the bedroom. She closed the door but did not lock it completely. A narrow gap remained. Sophie climbed onto the bed. "Is the game scary?" "No." Rachel knelt. "You stay with Eli. Where are you going right here?" Rachel moved to the door and looked through the opening. Caleb Knox stood in the living room wearing a navy suit and a dark wool coat. He was taller than Rachel expected. His silver watch caught the morning light. He carried no visible weapon. Damien stood between him and the hallway. The pistol remained low at his side. Caleb looked toward the kitchen. "I smell burned toast. Why are you here? Because you disappeared in the middle of an engagement dinner and dismantled 6 years of negotiations before breakfast. Leave." Caleb's expression tightened. "The Santoros controlled 2 clubs already. Then take them back. With what authority, mine?" Caleb laughed softly. "That is the problem. The captains are no longer sure you have any." Damien took 1 step forward. Caleb noticed the movement and stopped smiling. "What did Prescott tell you?" Damien asked. "That you humiliated his daughter for a woman. He knows nothing. He knows you followed someone from the car. He knows there were children." Rachel's hand closed around the edge of the door. Damien's voice became quiet. "Who told him traffic cameras? A waitress. A driver who saw you at the intersection." Caleb's gaze drifted toward the hallway. Damien moved to block it. The shift was small. Caleb saw everything. His eyes sharpened. "So it is true. Leave. You found them." Damien did not answer. Caleb looked almost amazed. "Children." The word sounded wrong in his mouth. "Your children." Damien raised the pistol. "Do not look toward that hallway again." Caleb's face changed. Not fear. Calculation. "Do the captains know no?" "They will." "No. You cannot hide an heir." Rachel looked at Eli. He sat beside Sophie, turning the stuffed rabbit's ear between his fingers. Caleb continued. "If you have a son, half the organization will see him as the next Cross. The other half will see him as a future threat. He is a child. To you." Caleb lowered his voice. "To everyone else, he is leverage." Damien's grip tightened. "The Santoros will take the boy to control you. Prescott will use the girl to force you back into the alliance. Your own captains may decide the safest solution is to remove both questions." Rachel covered her mouth. Sophie looked at her. "Mommy." Rachel pressed 1 finger to her lips. In the living room, Damien stood completely still. Caleb took another step. "You have to move them." "I know." "No. You have to give them to people who can make them disappear." Damien's eyes became cold. "They are not leaving with anyone." "Then contain the mother. Move the children separately." The air changed. Damien crossed the room before Caleb could react. He drove Caleb into the wall. The impact cracked the plaster. Caleb's breath left him. Damien's forearm pressed across his throat. The pistol rose beneath his jaw. Rachel froze. This was the man from the blood-stained cuff. The man from the hidden phone. The man who could turn violence on and off like a light. "Say her name like she is a problem," Damien whispered, "and I will put you through this wall." Caleb clawed at Damien's arm. His face darkened. "You are proving my point." Damien pressed harder. Caleb forced the words out. "This is why she ran from you." The sentence reached the hallway. Rachel saw Damien's expression change. His eyes moved toward the bedroom door. He saw the narrow opening. He saw Rachel watching. Then he saw Sophie behind her. The little girl stood on the mattress. Her gray eyes were wide. Damien looked back at Caleb. His finger rested against the trigger. For one terrible second, Rachel believed he would fire. Then Damien lowered the gun. He released Caleb. Caleb fell to his knees, coughing. Damien stepped away. He removed the magazine from the pistol, cleared the chamber, and placed the weapon on a table. The movements were controlled. His breathing was not. Caleb remained on the floor with one hand around his throat. Damien looked toward the hallway. Rachel. She opened the door fully. Sophie held tightly to her shirt. Eli sat behind them, confused. Rachel walked into the living room. Her eyes remained on Damien. You almost killed him in front of your daughter. Damien looked at Sophie. I know. No. You know because you saw her watching. He said nothing. What happens the next time you do not see her? Caleb laughed weakly from the floor. Rachel turned toward him. Be quiet. He looked at her with surprise. Rachel faced Damien again. You cannot protect them by becoming the thing they need protection from. Damien's face tightened. I stopped. This time. Yes. That is not enough. No. The answer was barely audible. Caleb pushed himself upright. What are you doing? Damien? Damien did not look at him. Call the captains. Caleb rubbed his throat. They are already waiting. Midnight, Pier 19, for what Damien looked toward Eli and Sophie, to divide the organization. Caleb stared at him. You cannot be serious. I am. You built it. Yes. You bled for it. Yes. And you planned to hand it away because 2 children appeared in a diner. Damien finally looked at him. They did not appear. His voice was calm again. They were there every day I was building something that could kill them. Caleb stood carefully. The Centauros will smell surrender. Let them. The captains will turn on you. Let them try. Caleb looked toward Rachel. Damien stepped between them again. This time he did not raise the gun. Caleb understood the warning. He collected his coat. At the front door he stopped. You cannot become another man because you changed your priorities. Damien's face remained unreadable. No. Caleb opened the door. But I can stop rewarding the one I became. The door closed behind him. Rachel stood in the silence that followed. Sophie slipped her hand into Rachel's. Eli walked toward Damien. Rachel almost stopped him. The boy looked at the unloaded pistol on the table. Is that a toy? Damien moved quickly. He picked it up and carried it to the hidden compartment. No. Can I touch it? Never. Eli looked disappointed. Damien knelt in front of him. It can hurt people. Did it hurt you? Damien looked toward Rachel. No. Then he looked back at Eli. But other things did. Eli reached out and touched the bruise forming across Damien's hand. Rachel watched Damien remain perfectly still beneath the child's fingers. Later, after the children ate cereal and the damaged wall had been covered with a sheet, Damien changed into a dark suit. Rachel stood in the bedroom doorway while he fastened his watch. You are going to the pier. Yes. You expect them to let you leave. No. Her stomach tightened. Then why go? Because if I stay, they come here. You could take us somewhere else. They would follow, and giving them everything stops that it gives them something more valuable to fight over. Rachel studied him. You planned this quickly. I have considered leaving before. She looked at him. When? The night you disappeared. The answer surprised her. Why did you not? Because losing you made me want more control, not less. He looked down at his watch. I thought if I owned enough of the city, no one could take anything from me again. Rachel leaned against the doorframe. And now I know ownership does not prevent loss. He reached for his coat. Rachel stepped into his path. Are you coming back? Damien looked at her. No. Her breath caught. He continued, "I do not expect to. Is that the truth?" "Yes. Or are you trying to make me feel something before you leave?" His expression softened. "The truth." Rachel looked away. Sophie appeared at the end of the hallway. She held Eli's stuffed rabbit. Damien turned toward her. "What is it?" She walked closer and held it out. "This is for you." He looked at the rabbit. "Eli needs it. He has the blue blanket." Damien accepted it carefully. "Why do I need this?" Sophie looked at him as if the answer were obvious. "So, you come back." Damien's face changed. The room became very quiet. He placed the rabbit inside his coat. Then he knelt so they were at the same height. "I will try." Sophie frowned. "Mommy says try means you might not." Rachel closed her eyes. Damien looked at Sophie for a long moment. "Yes." She hugged him before anyone could stop her, her arms wrapped around his neck. Damien froze. Then one hand rose slowly and rested against her back. Rachel saw him close his eyes, only for a second. Sophie pulled away. "You can go now." Damien stood. He looked at Rachel. No promise passed between them. No forgiveness. Only the knowledge that he was walking back into the world she had escaped carrying a damaged stuffed rabbit against his heart. The front door closed behind him. Rachel turned the lock. Then she stood with her hand on the metal listening until his footsteps disappeared. The stuffed rabbit pressed against Damien's ribs as the elevator carried him down. Its repaired ear brushed the inside of his coat each time the car moved. The small weight felt absurd beside the pistol at his back and the knife hidden inside his sleeve. Yet it was the rabbit he noticed, not the weapons, not the rain striking the garage door, not Nate waiting beside the black sedan with the engine running. Damien stepped into the garage. Nate studied his face. "You sure about this? No." Damien opened the rear door. "That is new." Nate did not smile. He walked around to the driver's side and slid behind the wheel. The sedan pulled into the wet Philadelphia streets. Damien looked back once. The townhouse windows were dark from the outside. Nothing suggested a woman and 2 children were hidden behind the brick walls. Nothing except the unfamiliar fear sitting beneath his ribs. Who confirmed the meeting he asked? "Every captain. The Santoros." "They are sending Vincent." Damien looked toward the rain. Vincent Santoro was the oldest son of the family patriarch. He wore tailored suits, collected rare watches, and ordered murders with the bored voice of a man choosing wine. Prescott. An attorney. Of course. Nate turned onto Broad Street. "Caleb arrived at the pier 20 minutes ago. He is early because he wants the room before I enter it. He has already spoken to several captains." Damien's eyes remained on the window. "What did he tell them, that you lost your judgment over a woman?" "That will be the kindest version." Nate glanced into the mirror. "You can still change the plan." "No. You could move Rachel and the kids tonight. Canada, Europe, South America. They would spend the rest of their lives running." "So would you." Damien touched the outline of the rabbit through his coat. "Yes." Nate tightened his hands on the wheel. "I never thought I would hear you agree to that." "Neither did I." They drove in silence. The city looked different from the back seat. Damien had spent years measuring Philadelphia by ownership. A club on one block, a judge on another, a warehouse near the river, a union office that answered his calls before answering the mayor. Now every building seemed to belong to someone else already. Rainwater ran along the curb. A delivery driver unloaded bread beneath a plastic sheet. A woman waited beneath a bus shelter with her child asleep against her shoulder. Damien watched them until the sedan turned away. Pier 19 stood beyond a chain-link gate near the Delaware River. The warehouse had been abandoned by legitimate business years earlier. Damien used it for meetings that needed thick walls and no witnesses. Tonight, every exterior light burned. Dark cars lined the loading area. Men stood beneath umbrellas with their hands inside their coats. Nate slowed near the gate. "Once we enter, I cannot guarantee the exit. You stay with the car." No, that was not a request. Nate looked at him through the mirror. "I have ignored worse orders." Damien almost smiled. "Then stay near the west door. Do not move unless someone draws first." Nate parked beneath the warehouse awning. Damien stepped out. Cold rain struck his shoulders before the door closed behind him. He walked toward the entrance alone. The guards searched him at the door. They found the pistol. They found the knife. They did not find the second blade sewn into the lining of his coat. One guard held out his hand. The phone, too. Damien placed it in the tray. The rabbit remained hidden against his chest. The warehouse interior smelled of rust river water and old oil. A long steel table stood beneath hanging industrial lights. Captains from Damien's organization occupied one side. Santoro men stood along the other. Vincent Santoro sat near the center, wearing a charcoal suit and a silver tie. Caleb stood behind Damien's empty chair. A dark bruise circled his throat. Every man in the room noticed Damien looking at it. Caleb smiled without warmth. "Glad you could join us." Damien removed his wet coat. He placed it across the back of the chair. The stuffed rabbit remained inside. Vincent saw a piece of its worn ear near the collar. His eyes sharpened, but he said nothing. Damien remained standing. "Let us begin." One of the older captains, Frank Moreland, struck the table with his palm. "Begin with an explanation. You lost 2 river clubs before breakfast," another man said. "You canceled a political marriage without consulting anyone." Prescott pulled his people from the Port Authority. Voices rose around the table. Damien waited. He had learned long ago that men revealed more when they believed silence was weakness. Caleb lifted one hand. The room quieted. He looked at Damien. "They want to know if the rumors are true." "Which rumors that Rachel Bennett returned?" The name moved through the room. Several captains exchanged glances. Some remembered her. Some had only heard that Damien once loved a woman who vanished. Caleb continued, "And that she did not return alone." Damien looked at each man around the table. No one looked away quickly enough. "You have all been busy." Frank leaned forward. "Do you have a son?" Damien's face remained still. "You came here to discuss the ports. We came because the head of this organization made a decision that may destroy us." Vincent Santoro turned a ring around his finger. "Family changes a man." His voice was smooth. "Sometimes it makes him stronger. Sometimes it gives everyone else a useful target." Damien looked at him. "Finish that thought." Vincent smiled. "I already did." The room fell quiet again. Damien reached inside his jacket. Several hands moved toward weapons. He removed 3 thick folders and placed them on the table. The first landed before Caleb, the second before Vincent. The third remained beneath Damien's hand. "What is this?" Caleb asked. "The first folder contains ownership transfers for the club's gambling rooms and street operations." No one spoke. Damien pushed the second folder toward Vincent. "That one contains the river routes Prescott offered you, along with 3 construction contracts and access to the southern terminal." Vincent did not open it. His eyes stayed on Damien. "You are dividing your territory." "Yes." A low murmur moved through the warehouse. Caleb stared at the folder in front of him. "You are serious. I have never been more serious." Frank rose from his chair. "You cannot hand away what belongs to all of us. It belongs to whoever can hold it when I leave." The room erupted. Men shouted over one another. Chairs moved against concrete. Vincent remained seated watching Damien as if the real negotiation had only just begun. Caleb struck the table. You are stepping down because of a woman? Damien looked at him. No. Then because of the children? Yes. The honesty silenced the room. Caleb laughed once. It sounded almost desperate. You built this organization from 6 blocks in a dying nightclub. You killed men for those terminals. I remember. You put half this city in your pocket. I remember that too. And now you are giving it away because 2 children appeared in a diner. Damien leaned closer. They did not appear. His voice remained low. They were alive every day I spent building something that could kill them. Vincent opened the folder. He turned several pages. Generous. It is not generosity. No, it is a purchase. Vincent looked up. Of what? My exit. A few men laughed. Vincent did not. No one exits with this much knowledge, he said. Damien rested his palm on the 3rd folder. This contains evidence connecting every man in this room to crimes that carry life sentences. The laughter stopped. Payments, photographs, dates, shipping records, recordings. Frank's face darkened. You threatening us. I am explaining the price. Caleb stared at the folder. Where are the copies? Somewhere you will never find. That is a lie. Damien looked at him. Then test it. No one moved. Rain beat against the warehouse roof. The river groaned against the pilings outside. Damien continued. The clubs go to Caleb. The river routes go to the Santoros. The captains receive equal shares of the construction interests. Prescott keeps his current secrets buried. Vincent closed the folder, and in exchange, no one searches for Rachel Monroe. The use of her new name was deliberate. No one searches for Eli or Sophie. No one follows Nate. No one speaks their names in connection with mine. Caleb's jaw tightened. You expect us to trust a threat from a man walking away? You do not need to trust me. Damien tapped the folder. You need to trust your fear of federal prison. Frank sat slowly. Vincent looked toward Damien's coat. The rabbit's ear remained visible. You truly mean to leave everything? Yes. Money too. Most of it. Your name. Damien glanced around the warehouse. The men in this room had once lowered their voices when he entered. Now they studied him like an animal deciding whether to attack or flee. The name is the first thing I am leaving. Caleb stepped away from the table. You think a document keeps them safe. It keeps all of you interested in keeping me alive. What if someone outside this room finds them? Then I handle it. Caleb shook his head. You still believe you can control the world? No. Damien's eyes hardened. I finally understand that I cannot. The answer unsettled the room more than a threat would have. Vincent leaned back. The Santoro family accepts the river routes pending verification. Frank looked toward him. You cannot agree before we discuss this. Vincent shrugged. He has placed a kingdom on the table. I see no reason to insult him by refusing it. Caleb opened his folder. His eyes moved across the ownership transfers. For a moment, ambition replaced anger. Damien saw it. Caleb had wanted the chair for years. He had simply wanted Damien to die before leaving it empty. You always wanted to be boss, Damien said. Caleb looked up. Careful. Why, the title is yours. The captains began speaking again. Some questioned the division. Others asked about percentages. Vincent discussed the port schedules with his attorney. The room turned toward the wealth. Exactly as Damien expected. He stepped away from the table. Caleb watched him. You forgot one thing. Damien stopped. Caleb's hand moved inside his jacket. Nate opened the west door at the same moment. The first gunshot broke the hanging light above the table. Darkness crashed across the warehouse. Men shouted. Chairs overturned. Damien moved before the echoes faded. Caleb fired toward the place where Damien had been standing. The bullet struck steel. Damien crossed the distance between them and drove his shoulder into Caleb's chest. They hit the concrete together. Caleb's gun skidded beneath the table. A second shot came from the Santoro side. Then Vincent shouted for his men to stop firing. Emergency lights flickered red along the walls. Caleb struck Damien across the mouth. Damien tasted blood. He caught Caleb's wrist and drove it against the floor. Bone cracked. Caleb screamed. Damien pulled the hidden blade from his coat lining and pressed it beneath Caleb's jaw. Around them, men held weapons but waited. No one wanted to choose the losing side too early. Caleb breathed hard. "You think this ends because you signed papers?" Damien's grip tightened. Caleb smiled through the pain. "You should have stayed at the house." Damien became still. "What did you do?" Caleb's smile widened. "You left your weakness behind one steel door." Damien pressed the blade into his skin. A thin line of blood appeared. "What did you do?" "I sent men before I came here." The warehouse disappeared around Damien. He saw only Rachel at the bedroom door, Sophie holding the rabbit, Eli standing on the stool with a bottle of juice. "How many?" Caleb laughed. "Enough." Damien reached for the gun beneath the table. His phone was still in the security tray near the entrance. Nate understood before Damien spoke. He ran. Damien looked down at Caleb. The old answer came easily. "Kill him. End the threat. Make the room remember who he was." Caleb saw the decision forming. You cannot become a father by pretending you are not a killer. Damien's finger found the trigger. His mind filled with Sophie's face as she watched him press a weapon beneath Caleb's jaw that morning. Mommy says people cry when things hurt. Damien released the gun. He caught Caleb's damaged hand and bent it backward until Caleb screamed again. Then he drove his fist into Caleb's throat. Not hard enough to kill him. Hard enough to make the point permanent. Damien stood. No. He looked down at the man who had betrayed him. But I can decide whether my children inherit one. He turned toward the captains. Caleb sent soldiers after my family during a protected meeting. Several men looked at Caleb with disgust. Even criminals required rules when rules were the only thing keeping them from slaughtering one another at dinner. Vincent closed Damien's folder. The Santoros had no knowledge of this. I believe you. You should. Vincent motioned to two of his men. They dragged Caleb upright. He could barely stand. What happens to him? Frank asked. Damien retrieved his coat. That is no longer my decision. Caleb stared at him. For the first time, true fear entered his face. Damien walked toward the exit. Behind him, the men who had once followed his orders began deciding what to do with the man who had tried to take his place. Across the city, Rachel heard the power fail. The bedroom lamp went dark. The heating system stopped. For 1 second, the townhouse held its breath. Then the security panel sounded once and went silent. Rachel stood beside the kitchen island. Sophie was drawing at the table. Eli pushed a small wooden car through a trail of cereal. Nate had left 20 minutes earlier after receiving Damien's call from the pier. Rachel looked toward the front windows. A dark vehicle waited in the alley. It had been there too long. She had noticed it twice before telling herself not to panic. Now there was no room for denial. Sophie. The girl looked up. We are playing the quiet game again. Sophie's face changed. She remembered the gun. Is Damien coming back? Rachel knelt beside her. I need you to listen. She took the secure phone Damien had left on the counter and placed it in Sophie's hands. There is one number on the screen. If I tell you to call, press it and say the lights went away. Sophie's fingers closed around the phone. What about Eli? You stay with him. A metal sound came from the garage below. Rachel lifted Eli. She took Sophie's hand and led them toward the service hallway. Damien had shown her the concealed door before leaving. She had accused him of building escape routes into every room. Now she pressed the hidden switch without hesitation. A narrow panel opened behind a bookcase. Concrete stairs descended into darkness. Rachel guided the children down. The passage smelled of dust and cold stone. At the bottom stood another steel door with a manual lock. She placed the children inside the small storage room beyond it. Eli began to cry. Rachel crouched in front of him. "Look at me." His lower lip trembled. "We are safe." "Where are you going to close the door?" Sophie held the phone against her chest. "Do I call?" "Not yet." Rachel kissed both children. Then she closed the door until only a thin gap remained. Footsteps crossed the living room above. 2 men, possibly 3. Rachel found a fire extinguisher mounted beside the stairs. She lifted it from the bracket. Her hands shook, but her grip remained firm. The service door opened at the top of the stairs. A beam of light moved along the wall. Rachel pressed herself into the shadow beneath the landing. 1 man descended. He wore dark clothes and held a pistol low. The second remained above. "Check the basement," he whispered. Rachel waited until the first man passed her. Then she pulled the pin from the extinguisher and pressed the lever. A white cloud exploded through the narrow stairwell. The man shouted. Rachel swung the metal cylinder into his wrist. The pistol struck the floor. She kicked it beneath the stairs. He reached for her. Rachel drove the extinguisher into his knee. He fell against the wall. The second man started down. Rachel slammed the steel service door and turned the manual wheel. The lock engaged. The man above struck it from the other side. The sound shook the stairwell. Rachel stepped away. The first attacker lunged. She sprayed him directly in the face. He stumbled blind toward the storage room. Rachel threw herself against him. He caught her arm. Pain tore through her shoulder. She drove her knee upward and twisted free. The man struck her across the face. Light burst behind her eyes. She fell against the wall. Behind the storage door, Eli screamed. The sound changed Rachel. She grabbed the fallen pistol. She had never fired one. She had watched Damien clear weapons before. She remembered the movement of his hands. Rachel pointed it at the attacker. "Do not move." He wiped white powder from his eyes. "You will not shoot." Rachel steadied both hands. "You came into a room where my children are hiding." The man looked at her face. He believed her. A pounding came from above, then a gunshot. The steel door shook. Rachel moved closer to the storage room. Sophie's voice came through the gap. "Mommy, call now." Sophie pressed the number. Damien was in Nate's car when the phone rang. Nate drove through a red light. Damien answered. He heard breathing, small, uneven. "Sophie." The lights went away. Damien gripped the phone. "Where is your mother?" "She is outside the little room." "Is Eli with you?" "Yes. Stay where you are." A loud impact sounded through the phone. Sophie gasped. "Damien, I am here. Are you coming?" The city blurred beyond the windows. "Yes." This time he did not say he would try. Nate turned hard into the townhouse street. The dark vehicle remained in the alley. 1 man stood near the garage entrance. Nate struck him with the front of the sedan before he could raise his weapon. Damien was out of the car before it stopped. He entered through the service door. The house smelled of smoke and chemical powder. A man lay unconscious near the kitchen. Damien heard pounding below. He reached the steel stairwell door and turned the wheel. The attacker on the other side raised his gun. Damien drove the door into him. The weapon fired into the ceiling. Nate followed and dragged the man to the floor. Damien ran down the stairs. Rachel stood beside the storage room with a pistol in both hands. Blood marked one side of her mouth. The first attacker knelt against the wall. Damien stopped. Rachel looked at him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then the gun lowered in her hands. Damien crossed the room. He checked her face, her shoulder, the blood at her lip. Where are they? Rachel opened the storage door. Sophie ran first. She struck Damien's legs and held on. Eli followed, crying. Damien dropped to his knees. His arms closed around both children. He looked toward Rachel before pulling them closer. She nodded. He gathered all three of them against him. Rachel's face pressed into his shoulder. Her hands gripped the back of his coat. The stuffed rabbit remained inside, crushed between his heart and Sophie's cheek. Nate appeared at the stairwell. We need to move. Damien looked at the attackers. Caleb. The captains have him. Alive. For now. Rachel pulled away. Is it over? Damien looked at her swollen lip. He could have lied. He could have promised safety because promises sounded like control. Instead, he told her the only truth he had. No. Her face tightened. But the organization is no longer mine. You gave it away. Yes, all of it enough. Rachel looked at the children. Sophie held the rabbit Damien removed from his coat. Eli had both arms around Damien's neck. Nate stepped closer. The Santoros accepted the river contracts. The captains accepted the division. Caleb violated the meeting. No one will stand behind him now. And Prescott Rachel asked. He will protect himself, Damien said. That means pretending none of us exist. Rachel wiped the blood from her mouth. What do we do? Damien looked around the narrow concrete room. The townhouse had failed. The steel door had failed. The cameras had failed. The city he once controlled had become the most dangerous place his children could remain. We leave. This time Rachel did not argue. An hour later, the final ledger burned inside the living room fireplace. The pages curled black at the edges. Names disappeared into flame. Numbers became ash. Damien stood before it while Nate loaded bags into an ordinary vehicle in the garage. Rachel entered the room. A dark bruise had formed along her cheek. She looked at the burning ledger. Does destroying that make the past disappear? No. Damien watched another page collapse. It only stops me from building the same future. Rachel stood beside him, not touching, not forgiving, but no longer across the room. The last page turned to ash. Damien closed the fireplace screen. Then he followed Rachel toward the garage where two tired children waited inside a car that carried none of his power and everything he had left. The vehicle waiting in the garage did not look like something Damien Cross would own. It was a dark green Chevrolet Tahoe with dull paint, a cracked cup holder, and a faded college sticker in the rear window. One headlight was slightly dimmer than the other. The fabric seats smelled of old coffee laundry soap and the faint dust of a car that had spent too many winters parked near salted roads. There was no armor in the doors, no black glass, no hidden compartment beneath the floor. Nothing about it announced money, danger, or power. Nate stood near the open trunk, pushing the last bag into place. Damien stopped at the bottom of the garage steps. For years, every car he entered had been prepared before he arrived. The engine running, the route planned, a second vehicle following at a distance, men positioned ahead of every turn. Now there was only the Tahoe, the rain, and a road with no territory waiting at the end of it. Rachel came down the stairs behind him with Sophie in her arms. A bruise had darkened along her cheek. Her hair was tied back with a strip of cloth. She wore one of the new coats Damien had ordered, but the sleeves were too long and covered half her hands. Eli walked beside her, gripping the stuffed rabbit by one ear. Damien looked at Rachel's face again. Every time he saw the bruise, something cold moved through him. Caleb was still alive. The thought did not sit easily. Rachel noticed where he was looking. Do not. Damien met her eyes. I did not say anything. You did not have to. Nate closed the trunk. The documents are in the glove box. New licenses, birth certificates, medical papers, and cash. Rachel's attention shifted immediately. What birth certificates? Copies, Nate said. The originals still exist under your name. These will get you through the first few weeks. Rachel looked at Damien. You prepared documents for the children without asking me. Damien's face tightened. Nate did. Because you told him to. Yes. She adjusted Sophie against her shoulder. You are already breaking the rules, and we have not left the garage. Nate looked away. Damien stepped closer, but not too close. The documents are optional. If you do not want to use them, we burn them. Rachel studied him. You would do that? Yes. Even if it makes leaving harder? Yes. She looked toward the Tahoe. Eli was trying to open the rear door. Nate moved to help him, but Damien lifted one hand. He walked over and crouched beside the boy. May I? Eli looked at Rachel. She nodded. Damien opened the door. Eli climbed inside without assistance and immediately pressed both hands against the seat. It is scratchy. Damien touched the fabric. Yes. Your other car was soft. This one is safer. Eli considered that. Because it is ugly. Nate coughed into his hand. Damien looked at the old dashboard. That may help. Eli climbed into the child seat. Damien reached for the buckle, then stopped. He looked at Rachel. She carried Sophie to the other side of the car. You can buckle him. Damien turned back. The straps looked more complicated than any weapon he had ever disassembled. He pulled one over Eli's shoulder. Eli pushed it away. That one goes there. He pointed toward the buckle. Damien tried again. No. Eli sighed with the patience of a disappointed teacher. Rachel watched from the other door. The clip sits at the center of his chest. Damien adjusted it, like this, a little higher. He moved it. Rachel nodded. Damien pressed the buckle until it clicked. Eli pulled against the straps. Good. The single word affected Damien more than it should have. He stood. Rachel placed Sophie in the seat beside her brother. The little girl looked pale with exhaustion. Damien reached into his coat and removed the stuffed rabbit. Sophie accepted it carefully. You kept him safe? I tried. She examined the repaired ear. He does not like guns. Damien's eyes moved toward Rachel. Neither do I. Sophie looked unconvinced. Nate handed Damien a set of keys. The tank is full. Damien closed his fingers around them. What about you? Nate glanced toward the garage entrance. I have a car 2 blocks away. You cannot stay in Philadelphia. I know. Damien reached inside his jacket and removed a thick envelope. Nate looked at it but did not take it. No. There is enough to start over. I said no. You have followed me since I was 20, and that means I know when you are trying to pay someone for leaving. It is not payment. What is it? Damien looked at the envelope. He had paid men to keep quiet, paid men to remain loyal, paid families after those men failed to come home. Money had always been the language he used when words were more dangerous. He held the envelope out again. It is gratitude. Nate stared at him. Then he took it. You were always terrible at saying that. I know. Nate slipped the envelope inside his coat. Florida, he said. Maybe I will buy a bar. You hate the heat. I hate being shot at more. Damien nodded. Nate looked past him toward Rachel and the children. You have no idea what you are doing. No. Good. Damien frowned. Nate opened the driver door for him. Men who think they understand family usually destroy one. Damien looked at his oldest soldier. Stay alive. Nate gave him a tired smile. You first. Damien moved toward the driver's seat. Rachel closed Sophie's door but did not walk around to the passenger side. She remained beside the Tahoe. Before we go. Damien stopped. Nate understood and stepped toward the garage exit. Rachel waited until he was out of hearing distance. Rain tapped against the steel door overhead. The engine remained silent. The children watched through the glass. Rachel folded her arms. I need you to understand what this is. Damien stood across from her. I am listening. I am not promising to love you again. He did not look away. I know. No. You hope I will. That is different. His jaw tightened slightly. Yes. I am giving you a chance to know Eli and Sophie. Damien glanced toward the children. Sophie pressed the stuffed rabbit against the window. Rachel continued. You do not make decisions for them alone. I understand. You do not send men to watch us. There are no men left to send. Do not avoid the point. He looked back at her. I will not have anyone follow you. You do not use fear to keep us near you. Damien remained silent. Rachel stepped closer. You cannot block doors. You cannot take my phone. You cannot threaten anyone who helps me. You cannot decide that your fear matters more than my choice. His eyes lowered toward the bruise on her cheek. And if your choice puts them in danger, then you tell me the truth, and we decide together. That may take time we do not have. Then you learn to speak faster. For 1 second, the corner of his mouth moved. Rachel did not smile. You do not lie because you think the truth will upset me. I will not lie. You said that before. I know. She held his gaze. And if I fail? The question sounded strange in Damien's voice. He had never asked what would happen if he failed. He had always arranged the world so failure belonged to someone else. Rachel looked toward the children. We leave. His face became still. You take them away again. Yes. The word hurt him. Rachel did not soften it. If you become the man I ran from, we leave. Damien nodded slowly. Then I will spend every day making sure you never have to. Rachel's eyes filled, but she blinked the emotion away. That is not a promise you make once. No, it is a choice you make every morning. Yes. She walked around to the passenger side. Damien remained beside the car for a moment. Then he opened the driver door and got inside. The key felt cheap between his fingers. The steering wheel was plastic. A small crack ran along the top. Rachel closed her door. The children shifted in the back seat. Damien placed the key in the ignition but did not turn it. The garage smelled of fuel-wet concrete and burned paper drifting down from the townhouse fireplace. Rachel looked at the glove box. The money. Damien rested his hands on the steering wheel. What about it? Where did it come from? The cash in the trunk came from legitimate property sales. All of it. Yes. She studied his face. I need the truth. The clubs, the gambling rooms, the river payments, and the offshore accounts tied to the organization remain behind. How much did you keep enough to live quietly? That does not answer the question. $400,000 in accessible funds. A clean trust holds another $800,000. Rachel stared at him. You call that living quietly? For me, yes. For anyone else, that is more money than they will see in a lifetime. I know. Whose name is on the trust yours? Her expression changed. What I created it 2 years ago. Why Damien looked through the windshield. The steel garage door filled the view. Because some part of me believed you were alive. Rachel did not move. I placed income from legitimate buildings into an account under your mother's surname. I could not locate you, but I wanted something ready if you returned. You hid money in my name. Yes. Without my permission. Yes. She closed her eyes. Damien waited for anger. When she opened them, there was something more complicated there. You do understand that using my name without asking is still control. Yes. even when you think you are helping. Yes. Rachel looked toward the glove box. Can I access it without you? Yes. Can you remove the money? No. Can anyone in your organization? The organization no longer exists in the form that created it. That is not what I asked. No, they cannot. Rachel sat back. I will work. Damien turned toward her. She lifted one hand. Do not. He closed his mouth. I am not asking. I know. I will work because I need something that belongs to me. The trust belongs to you. No. You built it. You funded it. It carries your decisions. Damien looked down at his bruised hands. What would belong to you? A job, a schedule, people who know me for something other than being the woman you lost. He nodded. All right. Rachel looked at him suspiciously. That easy, no. His honesty caught her. I want to tell you that you do not need to work. I want to tell you to stay somewhere guarded and let me provide everything. That sounds more like you. Yes. But you asked me to listen. Rachel looked away before he could see the emotion rising again. In the back seat, Eli kicked lightly against the fabric. Are we going? Damien looked into the mirror. Yes, where Damien looked at Rachel. She answered. Somewhere quiet. Is there cereal? Yes. Circles. We will find some. Sophie leaned forward as far as the straps allowed. Is Damien coming? Rachel looked toward him. The question seemed to hold the entire garage still. Yes, she said. Sophie settled back. Good. Why good? Eli asked. He knows how to open juice. Eli nodded as if this were sufficient. Damien turned the key. The engine started with a rough vibration. Nothing about the sound was elegant. It was perfect. He pressed the button clipped to the visor. The garage door began to rise. Gray morning light spread across the floor. Philadelphia waited beyond it, cold and wet. Damien placed the Tahoe in drive. Then he stopped again. Rachel looked at him. What is it? His hands remained on the wheel. I do not know what they eat. She waited. I do not know what stories they like. I do not know what Sophie is afraid of besides the dark. I do not know what to do if Eli cannot breathe. Rachel's expression softened. You learn. What if I am bad at it? You will be. Damien turned toward her. For the first time since the diner, Rachel almost smiled. Every parent is bad at parts of it. That is supposed to help. No. She glanced toward the children. The difference is whether you listen when someone tells you. Damien looked into the mirror. Sophie was arranging the rabbit's ears. Eli was pressing his face near the window. I can do that. Rachel looked at his scarred hands. You are learning. He eased the Tahoe forward. The tires crossed the garage threshold. The city opened around them. Nate stood beneath the awning as they pulled away. He lifted one hand. Damien returned the gesture. Neither man looked back after that. The roads were nearly empty. Rain had washed the streets clean but left deep water along the curbs. Traffic lights changed for intersections with no cars. Store owners lifted metal shutters. Delivery trucks idled behind restaurants. Damien drove without an escort. No second car followed them. No voice spoke through an earpiece. The absence felt louder than sirens. They passed one of the river clubs. 2 Santoro cars stood outside. Men Damien recognized carried boxes through the entrance. Rachel watched him. You could stop. No, you built that place. I renovated it. You know what I mean? Damien kept his eyes on the road. I know. Does it hurt? Yes. She waited for more. He gave it. It also feels smaller than I remember. They continued south. The courthouse rose through the gray morning. Damien remembered judges who accepted his calls and prosecutors who lost files at the right time. He drove past without slowing. At City Hall, the traffic light turned red. Damien stopped. The same crosswalk stretched before them. The place where rain had cleared from the windshield. The place where his old life had ended before he understood it. A father hurried across the street with a little girl beneath one umbrella. The girl jumped over a puddle and nearly pulled him off balance. Damien watched them reach the opposite curb. Rachel recognized the intersection. Her fingers tightened in her lap. "You were taking her home?" "Yes." "Amelia?" "Yes." Rachel looked through the windshield. "Were you going to marry her?" Damien did not answer immediately. "I would have gone through with the ceremony. That was not my question." He looked at her. "No. You would have married her, but not been married to her." "Yes." Rachel shook her head. "That is still a lie." "I know." The light remained red. Damien's hands tightened on the wheel. "I am sorry." Rachel looked toward him. "For Amelia. For building a life where promises meant nothing." The light turned green. A horn sounded behind them. Damien drove forward. They reached the highway as the city began to wake. Philadelphia receded in the mirrors. Eli fell asleep first. His head leaned toward Sophie. She pushed him away once, then allowed him to rest against her shoulder. Rachel watched them. Damien glanced toward her. "I owe you an apology. You owe me several." "I know." "Which one is this?" He focused on the road. "I am sorry I made a life you had to escape." Rachel became still. Damien continued. "I am sorry you were alone when they were born. I am sorry you sat in hospitals without anyone beside you. I am sorry you had to decide between loving me and keeping them safe." His voice remained steady, but his hands revealed him. The knuckles around the wheel had gone white. "I cannot ask you to forgive any of it." Rachel watched the wet highway. "I am sorry they lost 3 years with you." He looked at her. She shook her head. "That does not mean I was wrong to leave. I know. It means the choice hurt everyone." "Yes." Rachel's eyes filled. She wiped one tear before it reached her cheek. Damien did not reach for her. He let her keep the space between them. "That was not only your fault," he said. They drove north for hours. The rain weakened beyond New York. Clouds broke into pale strips of light. At a rest station in Connecticut, Damien parked near the far edge of the lot. Rachel unbuckled the children. Eli woke crying and confused. Damien stood beside the car, unsure whether to approach. Rachel lifted the boy. "He is hungry. I can get food. Nothing heavy." "What does he like, bananas?" "Crackers, plain yogurt." Damien repeated the items once. Then he walked toward the building. Sophie followed him. Rachel called her name. The little girl stopped. "I want to help." Rachel looked at Damien. He waited. "Stay where he can see you." Sophie took Damien's hand. His fingers closed carefully around hers. They walked across the parking lot. Rachel watched from beside the Tahoe. A man near the entrance glanced at Damien, then looked away quickly. Even without the suit, the guards, or the city something in Damien's posture, still warned strangers not to come close. Sophie did not seem to notice. She swung his hand slightly. Damien allowed it. Inside the store, Sophie rejected 3 types of crackers before choosing the ones with small fish shapes. Damien picked up 4 boxes. 1. He returned 3. She chose 2 bananas. Damien added 6. 1 bunch is fine. He placed the rest back. At the refrigerator, he selected every flavor of yogurt. Sophie looked at him. "You buy too much." Damien stared at the containers in his arms. "I have heard that." They returned to the car with one small bag. Rachel accepted it. Progress. Damien looked at Sophie. She supervised. They ate at a concrete table beneath a bare tree. Eli sat beside Damien. Yogurt covered his mouth. Damien tried to wipe it with a napkin. Eli turned his head. No. Damien stopped. Rachel held out her hand. Give it to him. Damien handed Eli the napkin. The boy wiped his own face badly and smiled. Damien looked at Rachel. She shrugged. He wants to do everything himself. So do you. Rachel met his eyes. Yes. He nodded. I am beginning to see where he gets it. The road carried them through Massachusetts as afternoon faded. The sky cleared completely near the New Hampshire line. For the first time, sunlight entered the Tahoe. Sophie woke and looked through the window. Where are we going? Damien looked at Rachel. She nodded for him to answer. Maine. Is that far? Not anymore. Is there a house? Yes. Is it your house? No. Sophie thought for a moment. Good. Damien glanced into the mirror. Why good your houses are empty? Rachel looked toward him. Damien did not argue. The rented house stood outside a small coastal town north of Portland. It was modest, weathered, and painted white. A narrow porch faced a line of dark pine trees. The ocean was not visible from the road, but the air carried salt. Dusk had settled by the time Damien parked. No gates surrounded the property. No cameras turned above the door. A single porch light burned. Rachel remained in the passenger seat. This is it. Yes, it looks normal. Damien studied the crooked porch rail. I was told that was the idea. The children woke when the engine stopped. Eli looked at the house. Do we live here? Rachel looked at Damien. For now, she said. They carried the bags inside. The house smelled of old wood and clean sheets. There were 2 small bedrooms upstairs, a narrow kitchen and a living room with a stone fireplace. Sophie chose the room facing the trees. Eli chose the same room because she had. Damien stood in the doorway while Rachel prepared the beds. He did not enter until she asked him to carry a bag. Later, after the children fell asleep, Rachel found Damien sitting on the front steps. The night was cold. He wore no coat. She stepped outside and closed the door quietly. You will freeze. I have been colder. That is not an answer. She placed his jacket beside him. Damien pulled it on. Rachel sat one step above. For a while they listened to wind moving through the trees. No traffic, no sirens, no men outside. Damien looked toward the dark road. Does the quiet bother you? Yes, me too. Rachel folded her hands. You can still leave. He looked at her. I mean this house, this town. You could go somewhere alone. No, you gave everything away. You may wake tomorrow and regret it. I already regret parts of it. Her face changed. Damien continued. I regret the men I left to fight over what remains. I regret giving Caleb enough trust to betray us. I regret that Nate has to disappear. And the rest? He looked through the window toward the room where the children slept. No. Rachel studied him. The porch light cast shadows across the scars on his hands. She reached toward him. Her fingers stopped before touching his. Damien remained still. He did not close the distance. Rachel placed her hand over his bruised knuckles. His breath changed. This is not forgiveness, she said. I know. It is not a promise. I know. She looked at him. It is one night. Damien turned his hand beneath hers. His palm opened. Rachel allowed their fingers to meet. One night, he said. 3 months later, the kitchen cabinet door fell off while Damien was making breakfast. It struck the floor with a loud crack. Eli laughed so hard milk came through his nose. Sophie covered both ears. Rachel entered the kitchen wearing blue medical scrubs beneath her winter coat. She looked at the cabinet door, then at Damien. I thought you fixed that. I did, clearly. Damien held a screwdriver in one hand. Eli stood beside him, holding a wooden spoon. He helped. Rachel removed her coat. That explains it. Eli looked offended. Damien crouched beside the broken hinge. The house had changed. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator. Shoes collected near the door. A lamp remained on in the upstairs hallway every night. Rachel's work schedule was written on a paper calendar beside Damien's appointments with a therapist in Portland. The word therapist had taken him 2 weeks to say without sounding angry. Eli's cardiology reports sat in a folder on the counter. His condition remained stable. Sophie had started preschool. She still checked every unfamiliar car parked near the house. Rachel still kept money in an account Damien could not access. Some nights she locked her bedroom door. Damien never questioned it. He slept in the smaller room across the hallway. The family had not become simple. It had become real. Rachel poured coffee. "What are you making, eggs?" She looked into the pan. "They are not burned. I have improved." Sophie sat at the table coloring a picture. "It took him 80 times. 23, Damien said. Sophie did not look up. 80. Eli climbed onto his chair. "Dad, I want toast." The room became still. Eli reached for a spoon, unaware of what he had said. Damien remained crouched beside the cabinet. His hand tightened around the screwdriver. Rachel watched his face. He looked down before the children could see. Sophie continued coloring. "You have to make it light," she said. "Not black." Damien stood slowly. His voice failed the first time. He cleared his throat. "I know." He placed bread in the toaster. Rachel said nothing. She did not rescue him from the emotion. She let him stand inside it. A few minutes later, Damien carried the toast to the table. Eli accepted it without ceremony. Damien sat beside him. Outside, a dark sedan moved slowly along the road. Damien noticed it through the kitchen window. The car passed the house. Then it stopped near the harbor road. His body became still. Rachel followed his gaze. She set down her coffee. "Do we need to leave?" Damien watched the vehicle. 3 months earlier, he would have reached for a weapon. 2 months earlier, he would have called Nate, though Nate no longer answered the old number. 1 month earlier, he would have moved the children before telling Rachel what he had seen. Now he stood beside her. "I do not know." Rachel looked at him. "What do you need the license plate?" "I can write it down." "A clear photograph." She picked up her phone. Damien did not stop her. Together they watched the car. After several seconds it pulled away and disappeared beyond the trees. The kitchen remained quiet. Sophie looked up from her drawing. Was that a bad car? Damien turned toward her. "I do not know yet. Are we leaving?" Rachel waited. Damien looked at the children, the broken cabinet, the light toast, and the paper calendar filled with ordinary days. "Not yet," he said. He returned to the table. Eli pushed half his toast onto Damien's plate. "You can have this." Damien looked at the small piece of bread, then at his son. "Thank you." Outside, the road remained empty. Inside, Damien ate the toast.